Thank you very much. Good morning, dear colleagues. Thank you very much for the invitation to BledCom. My topic today is internal communication as power management in change processes. And with this kind of approach, I want to give you maybe a new idea to interpret internal communication, which I combine here to change management, to point out what's the idea of change communication, of internal communication. We had many ideas today and many aspects to discuss it. And I want to draw your attention to the question first, what is change management, by the way? What is change communication, by the way? And what is internal communication with this example? This is a question, many questions probably. I have 10 minutes, that's plenty time, but I try it. And if you look at the first two aspects I have here, it's the difference between management and change management. And the interesting thing here is now that any kind of management is a kind of change management. Because as soon as you start with managing anything, you have any form, any kind of gap analysis you try to handle with your management program. So, where, by the way, is a difference between management and change management? And if we look into the literature and into the practice, there are so many ideas and suggestions to define it. And the interesting thing here is that if you look at literature, for example, the question of power is hardly a question of traditional management. Classic economic theory is powerless, some people said, and I think that's correct, classical economic theory. But if you turn to change management and you look at this kind of literature, there we have the discussion of power. And that's very interesting because, in my view, there we have a chance to get into the discussion of what internal communication is and what change communication may be able to deliver. The question now is, what is power? That's a really difficult question, and there are so many concepts, and I'm sure you know all the ideas we find in literature regarding the idea of power, of communication, power and society, power and management. There are so many, and I can't discuss it here today, 10 minutes. But just to give you two really basic ideas, we have power related to function and the kind of power related to relations. And that's interesting because we do public relations, internal communication. We get the background today. And that's where I am here with this approach. So power is something like a highly dynamic and informal dimension of that what organizational structure is delivered to with communication. That's the idea. And of course it's short, of course it's many room for debating here, but I need to go on here with my time slot. And so I want just to give you here an overview of architecture of change management. You can see in the first part of this slide, and change communication, renewed internal communication, which is here differentiated with the management of hard factors like costs, time to market, and so on with change management, and change communication combined to soft factors. And we get so many ideas what soft factors are today, with happy people, we heard with the first keynote today, or with identification, or all the kind of definitions we heard today. So that's the structure. Change communication in the down part of it, and soft factors are the key object of change communications. What we did to find out if it's true or not, we did a survey with 60 PR agencies in Germany, and I just can give you 2 or 3 examples of answers we get. And we asked them, for example, what is your role with change communication? And that was quite interesting because if you look at the answers, it isn't really clear. For example, does a PR agency have a strategic role within change communication? Good question. You see it's split. On the one hand, they say, yes, we should do and we have a strategic role with more or less 40%, but the others say to more or less 70%, no, we are in an operational service, we are doing media like we heard before. Just one step. Another step is the change communication anything that goes beyond the conception and implementation of communication measures? That means, do we have, for example, behavioral management as a part of change communication? And you see it's not 50% who said yes. That's interesting because if you are talking about power, is it really possible to manage power without behavioral management? Interesting question. Just to give you one idea here of the results we get. But the majority of the surveyed agency agree that issues of power overlay facts in change processes. More than 80%, 85% agree, strongly agree, that the management of power is a key issue of change management. And that's interesting. If you go back to the other results, we see, or we saw, that behavioral management, for example, is not a part of change communication. So there are much more results, and I want to go to the conclusion now because I just have 2 minutes. And let's say it like this. This is a project that tries to define what really change communication does, what internal communication does in times of change. But the branch itself doesn't really know it today, because you have really 2 parts of answering agencies. One part is very operative, very close to media communication, and the other part tries to do coaching and consulting to the top management. Of course, it's now very, very wrapped up here due to my time, and that's the only thing I can introduce today to combine the idea of internal communication to the effect of what it really measures. And that's the management of power, and maybe the management of power is a bracket for all the items we get before, with identity, with motivation, with happy people we heard today in the morning. So power as a bracket for all these kinds of mental processes we all know from internal communication. Thanks.